Welcome to part 3 of Investor Deck Basics, the big questions. This video is about the questions you need to answer when putting together your deck, and it's the third in a series of short videos about fundraising for startups and putting together a deck. Now, these videos about fundraising for startups and putting together an investor deck should be particularly helpful for entrepreneurs who are looking to grow their business and are exploring options for how to raise the necessary capital. Entrepreneurs who have been trying to raise capital, who may have hit some roadblocks and are looking for a greater understanding of the process. And also people who may have an idea for a business and are trying to get a sense of what may lie ahead if they take the plunge. These are short videos about a range of topics on startups and fundraising that go from broad overviews to deeper, more advanced topics for those of you further in your fundraising. They're completely modular, so take what you need and leave the rest. My name is Lisa Sue. I'm a startup funding strategist here in Los Angeles. I'm a longtime board member at Women Founders Network, and I've run the coaching program there for the last 5 years. I'm a mentor at a number of accelerators like Techstars and the Precelerator. And if I look familiar, you may have seen me featured in the Huffington Post, Business Rockstars, Startup Nation, Women 2.0, talking about startups, tech, fundraising, women in business, any number of topics. Now, as I mentioned, this is the third and final video in this initial short 3-part series on Investor Deck Basics. The first video answered the question about what is a deck and was a short overview of investor decks. The second video, the one from last week, was about the structure of a deck, what a deck looks like and why. And this final video is about the deeper questions you need to answer with your deck. And now that that short intro is out of the way, let's get into it. In the first 2 videos, we covered the broad overviews of what a deck is and what it looks like. But now we're going to dig into the guts of what investors are really trying to get at and what they need to get from your deck before they can write a check. In other words, what are the questions you really need to answer to get that money? Now, you may be thinking, wait, how is this different from what we talked about last week? Aren't the questions, the slides what we talked about? You know, the whole problem, solution, product or service, market traction stuff. Aren't those what investors want to know about? And the answer is yes. Investors want to know about those points of your business, but the reason that they want to know is because they're the data points that go into answering these really big underlying questions that go into the decision to invest or help you in some other way. The problem, solution, market, etc. formula is the fastest way for most VCs to process the information, get to their initial follow-up questions, and then come to their conclusions on these big picture questions and make a decision. So what are those questions? That was a big buildup. Every investor may be slightly different. They each have their own markets and segments that they specialize in. But generally within those areas, these are pretty consistently the overarching questions that they need to answer as they make an investment decision. First, is there really a good product market fit? Do I really see a real need or opportunity in the market for this? And do I see a customer base that really wants it or will want it in the near future? What evidence is there that someone is really going to pay for it? I mean, I've seen entrepreneurs come in with a bunch of surveys, focus groups, stuff, which is a helpful initial indicator, but people can say all kinds of stuff in a survey or a focus group. How good of an indicator is that someone is really willing to put a credit card down to pay for something either for themselves or for their business? Is this something that can scale? Is this something that can keep growing to many times, say 100 times its current size? Can this grow to a point that gets me to a return on the investment that I need? Or is this something that has a natural limit to how much it can grow? Like, for example, is this something that can only be sold in North America? That may be okay, that may be a big enough market, but that might be a natural limit to how much it can grow. Or is the limit, for example, with some regulated industries, is it something that's going to be limited on a state-by-state basis, which could be a big issue in some cases, in a lot of cases actually? Is this something that is only going to be sold to a very small segment of the population? Is it a segment of the population that's growing? These are all big issues for investors, because you could have a really good business, but it just will never grow to a size that an investor can get the kind of ROI that they really need. So, for example, this is a big part of why investors look at the market slide really, really closely in most cases. Is this the right time for the opportunity? Is the current environment one in which this product or service has a real chance of success? Are there outside issues that could get in the way of it growing? Or is there an outside factor that could really give this a rocket boost? Obviously, in pandemic times, that's become a real outside factor for a lot of businesses that otherwise might be really growing right now. Or in a few cases, the pandemic has become a rocket fuel for some businesses, for a lot of stay-at-home businesses, for startups that work with businesses that would otherwise be in retail and now have to shift to something else, things that are related to delivery. This has become a perfect opportunity for. So is this the right time for the opportunity? And finally, this is a huge issue for a lot of investors. Is this the team that can pull this off? I say this many, many times for those of you who know me personally. I say this all the time, but it's not unusual for me to see 5 teams give me the same idea in the same month they're trying to grow. And it really becomes a question of which team is the one that can really pull it off. So do I feel confident that they can do this? Do they have the expertise necessary? What's my trust level with the team? How confident do I feel that they can put the support team underneath them that can pull it off? Have they shown me that they can do it? If you talk to investors regularly, you'll often hear them talk about that they feel that they are really backing the founder or founders rather than a business idea. And that's because businesses pivot so often before they come to the business that ultimately takes off. So comfort with the team is a really big issue for most investors, and why they really tend to probe who the team is, what their experience is, as they make a decision to invest. So these are the questions that you should really be keeping in mind as you prepare to talk to investors and put together your deck. If you're not sure whether you should include or not include a point in your deck or your conversation, I would review that point with these issues in mind. Does it help to answer one of these questions in some way? I'll often get founders come to me like, well, this point doesn't really fit the 10 to 12 slide format, or this doesn't pertain to me, or there's this other issue that we keep getting asked about from investors. As I said, the 10 to 12 slide format, very helpful because it's how most investors process the information. But if there's another really important data point, you should think about how to work that in. Or if there's something that doesn't pertain for some reason, unusual, usually the 10 to 12 slides are pretty important for most businesses. Go back to these questions because they'll help you make decisions on what's the pertinent information you need to include and or include in an appendix. Be prepared to answer questions about all these issues. So keep this checklist in the back of your head. Now, this wraps up my first 3-part series of videos. I know I've really enjoyed putting this first group of videos together, and I hope it's been a really helpful overview. But my next 3-part series of short videos will be on developing the story of your pitch. The story is how a pitch connects emotionally with investors. It's what makes it memorable. It's what elevates it to another level. So I can't wait to start sharing that with you next week. But if you have questions in the meantime, I love to chat. So please feel free to send me an email or drop by my virtual office hours, which you can always find on my website, winningpitch.net. Until then, friends, virtual hugs.